You don't kill humanity's friends and expect to dance afterward. The ones who learn that lesson too late never live long enough to teach it. There are 10,000 ways to die in space. Starfire, black holes, biological contagions, gravity weapons. But the worst way, the most final way, is to cross Earth after it calls you family. The Arvani did, not in blood, but in soul. They were crystalline beings who spoke in light and lived in song. Where others built machines, the Arvani grew luminous spires that pulsed with color and warmth. Their cities shimmered like coral reefs across the moons of Lyran. Their diplomats never raised a voice. They didn't need to. Their presence was peace. When humanity first stepped into galactic politics, still raw from their own wars, the Arvani were the first to welcome them, not as subjects, not as curiosities, but as equals. They gave us access to the folded space relays, shared energy harmonics that stabilized our quantum drives, celebrated our art, admired our chaos, laughed with us. They didn't just make room at the table. They let us sit at the head of it when needed. They called us cousins of choice, and we loved them for it. We danced under their twin moons. We carved treaties in crystal that sang when touched. We named our first child born in orbit around Lyran Solari, a name half Terran, half Arvani, meaning sunbringer. So when the transmission stopped, when the singing fell silent, it wasn't just diplomatic channels that noticed. It was us. Earth dispatched a fast response recon team, just a few scout frigates under stealth veil. No heavy weapons, just sensors and hope. They never even saw a battlefield. They found a grave. Lyran, once vibrant with song and shimmering with color, was a mausoleum. Its sky was blackened with soot. The sea, once iridescent and full of bioluminescent reefs, now bubbled with chemical rot. The great crystal towers had been shattered, pieces scattered like bones across glass deserts. Not a single Arvani life form remained. Not a transmission. Not a distress signal. No trace of defense fire. Just clean, clinical annihilation. Then, on the Capitol Spire's ruins, they found it, burned deep into the crystal like a brand. A 7-spiked black sigil. It belonged to the Threx Dominion. The scouts returned in silence. Their recordings were sent directly to Earth's Unified Council. There was no debate, no war vote, no embargo or sanction. Earth's president simply said 2 words, "They're gone." And in those 2 words, something shifted. Because you don't just kill someone's friend. You don't erase a peaceful people who once sheltered your children and expect the universe to shrug. The Threx hadn't just committed genocide. They had broken something sacred. To understand Earth's rage, you must understand the Threx. They're a warrior caste society, 6-limbed reptilian predators bred for conquest. Their empire stretches across 82 star systems, forged in blood, bound by creed. They believe the strong must dominate, the weak must kneel, and purity is achieved only through war. The Arvani, in their eyes, were an offense, too peaceful, too harmonious, a flaw in the universe. So they cleansed them, and then they threw a parade. Threx Prime broadcasted the victory of purity across open galactic channels. They showed their war leaders parading trophies, shards of Arvani crystal, stacked in piles like hunted ivory. They toasted under banners bearing that 7-spiked sigil. One general gave a speech that was burned into every Earth memory net within hours. Let this be a lesson to the singers and diplomats. Peace has no place among stars. Only fire will rule. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that Earth doesn't shout when it's angry. It listens. Then it hunts. Earth did not respond through official channels. There were no fiery threats. No war cries. Just silence. But deep in orbit above Luna, lights began to flicker beneath the dark side. Ancient hangars opened. Ones most had forgotten existed. From cryo vaults and secret dry docks, Leviathan Protocol was reactivated. Project Nemesis, Earth's most advanced military AI, mothballed for a generation, was given a new primary directive: erase the Threx Dominion. Not defeat, not engage, erase. And while the Threx feasted, Earth moved. Vanguard-class stealth cruisers, previously thought to have been dismantled after the last interstellar accord, began vanishing from Terran space yards. Black Ops ships vanished into folded space relays, arriving in Threx territories as trader vessels, refugee ships, salvage haulers. Unarmed, unassuming, but watching, mapping trade lanes, infiltrating orbital defenses, identifying supply bottlenecks, and above all, locating every last Dominion core world, every shipyard, every breeding moon, every command structure. Earth's enemies once mocked them as slow, sentimental, democratic. But they forgot something crucial. Humans do not forgive extinction. We do not move on. We remember, and we return. The Arvani had sung with us under stars, grown gardens that twisted with Terran soil, helped us find our place in the galactic choir. Now there was no song, no light, just the echo of a people who believed peace was possible and were murdered for it. And Earth? Earth was not going to let the killers dance on the ashes. It didn't start with screams. It started with silence, the kind that made even the bravest soldiers hold their breath. No protests, no press releases, no fiery declarations. Earth simply went quiet. And in that quiet, the Threx laughed. Oh, they laughed loud. Galactic networks broadcast their celebrations. Crimson banners draped across Threx Prime. Ceremonial blades raised high. Their warriors march in formation over the broken crystal remains of what had once been the Arvani embassy. Threx commentators mocked Earth's lack of action. The Terrans have no stomach for war. They cry over their broken toys while we write history. Humanity hides in its gravity well, while real empires rise. They toasted with blood wine, paraded their conquests, and built statues of their generals, made from actual Arvani crystal, fused and warped into grotesque forms. But Earth wasn't hiding. It was calculating. Far from the cameras and galactic broadcasts, something ancient stirred in Earth's military archives. Files locked behind 20-level security codes. Protocols sealed since the post-solar conflict. Project Nemesis was awakened. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was worse. Nemesis was Earth's final war AI. Not just smart, brilliant. Not just autonomous. Relentlessly strategic. It had defeated entire coalitions in simulations. It had calculated wars out of existence by planning the enemy's next 5 decades of mistakes. And now it had one directive: erase the Threx Dominion. The president didn't appear on screen. She met only once in person with the War Council. No notes, no pomp, just a nod. Do it. And with those 2 words, the gears turned. Humanity had prepared for this day, though few knew it. Beneath the frozen crust of Europa, fusion yards sparked back to life. Mars orbital stations, once listed as decommissioned, began deploying stealth satellites. From Neptune's shadow, the Vanguard fleet launched into folded space. Each ship masked, silent, and carrying a payload that hadn't been tested in over a century. Earth's enemies always underestimated one thing: humanity never wasted time. It just waited for the right one. The first moves weren't explosions. They were questions. Threx patrols noticed strange gravitational distortions near their trade routes. A deep space mining fleet reported a rogue AI embedded in its navigation system, right before they crashed into a neutron star. A Threx outpost on Glyzer 9 vanished. Just gone. No debris. No signal. One moment, 800 soldiers running drills. The next, silence. All that remained was a message burned into the training hall's titanium walls: you'll never celebrate again. And then came the cloak fleets. Earth didn't send battleships screaming into enemy territory. No, that would have given the Threx a war. Earth sent in ghosts. Unmanned drones laced with quantum cloaks. Subspace crawlers that embedded themselves inside enemy comm stations and rerouted orders. Viral code seeds hidden in trade shipments. Code that wormed through military databases, learning how the Threx move, how they thought, what they feared. Within 6 weeks, Earth knew every Threx fleet's fuel schedule, every general's travel plan, every munitions depot's delivery route. Within 8, Nemesis had mapped every escape route, and how to close them all. The Threx still didn't suspect. Why would they? In their minds, Earth was still mourning, still licking its wounds, still scared. So they celebrated harder. A festival was planned, the Purity Jubilee. The capital would host a week-long triumph to commemorate the cleansing of the Crystal Plague, as they so eloquently put it. All military units were ordered to parade in full regalia. Security was light. They believed no one would dare attack during their divine hour, and Earth agreed, so they didn't attack during it. They attacked 10 hours before. Threx Prime's orbit cracked open like an egg. One by one, cloaked Terran vessels dropped their shrouds and unleashed hell. They weren't traditional warships. These were specters, small, agile, and devastating. Each carried only a single weapon, planetary silencing bombs. EMP charges on a scale never seen. Not just electrical disruption, but reality-folding pulses designed to collapse digital systems, freeze atmospheric defense nets, and erase memory cores. Within 30 seconds, the entire Threx planetary grid went dark. Then came the kinetic strikes. No lasers, no messy plasma blasts, just pure, crushing velocity, rods of tungsten, dropped from orbit at terminal speed. Silent, precise, and utterly unstoppable. They hit government centers, command towers, military archives, the very palace where the supreme warlord was preparing his speech. It was over before it began. Not a single Terran soldier had landed, not one, and yet Threx Prime burned. But Earth wasn't done. Not yet. As Threx colonies across the galaxy screamed for instructions, Earth blocked their long-range comms. Not jammed, corrupted. Every message sent returned as a whisper, looping one phrase in multiple languages. For the Arvani, every station, every relay, every encrypted backup, overwritten with music. Not Earth's, not war drums, not Terran anthems. Arvani song, recordings of their great festivals, their harmonies, their laughter, their joy, broadcast in loops over and over to the people who had tried to erase it. The Threx tried to regroup, but their fleets couldn't coordinate. Their chain of command was severed, and the only data they could access was a looped hologram of an Arvani child, placing a crystal flower in a human ambassador's hands. Smiling, peaceful, alive, the past weaponized. Their guilt reflected, the face of what they destroyed, etched into their screens, just before Earth's final blow. In every Dominion control system, Earth's message echoed. We will not warn. We will not forgive. You killed our friends. You will not celebrate. No empire believed it about to die, until its cities fall without a sound. Threx Prime didn't fall in fire. It fell in silence. No sirens. No alarms. Just screens flickering to black. Streetlights failing one by one. Military satellites vanishing from orbital maps. An entire planet, connected in armor like a fortress, suddenly blind. The warlord's voice, usually booming across 10 planetary systems, never made it past the ceiling of his war chamber. Because Earth didn't come to conquer Threx Prime. It came to erase it. In the capital city of Corvallis, just hours before the Purity Jubilee, armored divisions stood idle in formation, waiting for command to march. Tanks hummed. Air cruisers drifted in ceremonial sky patterns. Citizens, if you could call the snarling armored masses of Threx citizens that lined the streets in violent joy, chanting blood-slick slogans. Then, at exactly 6 o'clock Galactic Standard Time, the skies changed. The clouds didn't roll in, they were drawn in, fabricated. A wall of artificial storm that blackened the sun and disrupted every known form of energy detection. No visual confirmation of attackers. No radar locks. Just a creeping pressure in the air. Something was watching them, and then the song started. At first, it was just a hum, barely noticeable beneath the rumble of tank engines. Then louder, a crystalline harmony. Delicate, bright, Arvani. The streets fell still. Even the war beasts, genetically engineered juggernauts bred for crowd control, whimpered and lay down. And on every public broadcast tower, once painted in screaming red banners of the Threx Dominion, a hologram appeared. It showed a memory, the last Arvani festival. Beings of light dancing in spires of blue flame. Children glowing with innocence. Voices and chords that soothed even the most hardened soul. The image held looping, singing, and then the screaming began. Not from humans, from Threx. The first wave of destruction wasn't kinetic. It was psychological. Project Nemesis didn't want resistance. It wanted fear. It wanted the same paralyzing horror the scouts had felt when they found the Arvani homeworld turned to glass. So the humans gave the Threx their own version. Civilians found their doorways sealed. Transport routes disabled. Military personnel tried issuing commands, but their systems now translated every word into Arvani song lyrics. Their own AIs began speaking in voices of the dead. Some soldiers tried to fire, but their weapons triggered self-destruction protocols, rewired by Earth's infiltrator code weeks earlier. A high command building attempted launch of counter-defense drones. The drones activated and turned back. Kamikaze strikes, right into their own hangars. The message was clear. You are not safe. You will never be safe again. And then came the second wave. That's when the sky cracked. Earth stealth carriers hidden in orbit released payloads of gravity shears, weapons that didn't explode but ripped. Thin layers of controlled gravitational fold technology, slicing through reinforced structures like butter. Entire military installations collapsed as if erased with a god's fingertip. Orbital stations began raining debris. The warlord's parade platform vanished. 1 second it stood tall, flanked by armed guards. The next it was just a gaping hole in the ground. Its supports cleanly cut mid-atom. No Terran flag was planted. No troops touched the surface. Earth didn't come to win a war. It came to deliver a verdict. Within minutes, Corvallin's military hierarchy was gone. Not dead, absent. The system itself couldn't track their movements. Earth had activated singularity slips, one-time micro-wormholes that pulled their enemies into null space. They weren't even sure if they were dead. They just weren't. Across Threx Prime, panic spread. Entire cities lost power, water, navigation. Starports were sealed from orbit. Emergency override locked by Terran keys. Every escape shuttle that launched, shot down, not by missiles, but by their own navigation systems, redirected into planetary defense towers that were still stuck in diagnostic mode. Nemesis was surgical. Every piece of Threx strength was used against itself. And then, Earth's voice finally arrived. A single audio message. No face. No leader. Just a calm, neutral Terran voice that echoed across all frequencies. You killed the Arvani, who called us kin. You did not expect consequences. You expected silence. You were mistaken. There will be no occupation. No treaties. No survival. There will only be absence. The galaxy will not forget them. But you'll be forgotten before your last sun burns out. And with that, Nemesis initiated Protocol Thanatos. No explosive payloads. No nuclear fire. Just deletion. Within the planetary crust, hidden through pre-infiltration efforts, Terran nanoviruses awoke. Not organic viruses, data viruses, designed to infiltrate every digital layer of Threx civilization. Infrastructure, history banks, military archives, population registries, genetic vaults, even cultural records. Deleted, gone. The Threx would not just die. They would be erased from memory. No one would remember their victories. No songs, no symbols, no stories. Just dust and static. One final act remained. In orbit above Threx Prime, Earth deployed its last gift, a beacon of memory. Not for the Threx. For the Arvani, the beacon sang. A loop of Arvani voices, encoded in pure light, projected across the system for all to hear. It was their final hymn, the one they performed with humanity during the peace accord signing. Now it would play forever. A warning, a remembrance, a promise. Across the galaxy, empires froze. Treaties were re-examined. Aggressors pulled their fleets inward. Because it wasn't just that Earth had destroyed an empire. It was how. No negotiation. No chest beating. Just a quiet, surgical extinction so complete that even the stars seemed to whisper, "Don't touch humanity's friends. Not unless you want to vanish without a tombstone." The galaxy didn't speak for 3 days. Not a single ambassador transmission. No trade alerts. Not even pirate broadcasts. Every frequency, Every diplomatic, military, or commercial channel was flooded with the same haunting image. Threx Prime, dark and silent, its once golden cities reduced to smoking shadows. No Terran flag, no occupation, just the eerie echo of Arvani's song, still playing across its orbit, a crystal harmony that now whispered to all who listened. Earth remembers, Earth avenges, Earth erases, and somewhere in the quiet corners of 1,000 star systems, powerful species who once scoffed at humanity found themselves staring at their own reflections and wondering what might happen if Earth ever looked their way. Before Threx, humanity had been underestimated, too emotional, too disjointed, too slow to join the interstellar stage. The great empires, Zorthan Syndicate or Collective Yulari Convergence, had once debated whether Earth deserved even observer status in the Galactic Council. But now Earth was no longer seen as a backwater species, fumbling with diplomacy. Now, Earth was spoken like a myth. On the Council's central world, Galaxis Prime, diplomats from 600 civilizations sat in silence as the emergency session began. No arguments, no grandstanding, just a chilling playback of Earth's orbital broadcast, played frame by frame, the Arvani child offering a crystal flower. The message burned into Threx war steel. You'll never celebrate again. And finally, the voice of Project Nemesis, clinical and calm. You will not be remembered. Even the Yulari, a species known for their emotionless stoicism, paused mid-breath. Earth had not declared war. Earth had declared irrelevance. To be removed from the timeline itself was more terrifying than any weapon. Some tried to speak up. A Zorthan war baron rattled his mandibles and sneered. They've set a dangerous precedent. We must restrain Earth's ambitions. He was silenced by a single data feed, a hologram of a dormant Terran war fleet, stationed near a neutron star, 30 dreadnoughts, unmanned, cloaked, silent, with trajectories already calculated for every major capital in the galaxy. One line beneath the image. This was active before the Threx incident. The room fell into stunned horror. Earth had planned contingencies. Before they were provoked, they had prepared not for war, but for retribution on a scale no other species had even conceived. The Yulari ambassador leaned forward, gill flaps shivering. This was never just a rescue. This was a demonstration. And she was right. Earth had broken no laws. It had invaded a sovereign territory. It had responded to a genocide, one ignored by the very council now wringing its hands. The Arvani had petitioned for protection 4 times before they were slaughtered. Each time, they'd been told to await further review. Humanity had not waited. And now, every species that had laughed at Earth's emotional attachments to its allies suddenly valued loyalty a little more. Within a month, alliances shifted like tectonic plates. Treaties were rewritten. Aggressive patrols along Terran borders vanished. The Ur Collective, once a cold rival of Earth's Mars Accord, invited Terran diplomats for a permanent seat at their joint defense table. The Drakkar, feared mercenaries who had once raided Earth's outer colonies, began offering protection to Terran trade fleets for free. But the most drastic shift came from Solari Ascendancy, a civilization older than Earth's written language. They had never spoken directly to humanity, never intervened, never noticed the Terrans. Until now, a message arrived at Earth's lunar embassy. Simple, direct, carved into a photonic crystal the size of a grain of rice. The Arvani were ours to protect, and we failed. You did not. Earth is hereby welcomed into Constellum Pact. It was the oldest, most powerful diplomatic alliance in known space. Its members had shaped galactic history for over 20,000 years. And now, Earth was invited in not for politics, for principle. Back on Earth, there were no celebrations, no fireworks, no victory parades, just quiet remembrance. The Arvani Memorial, once modest and tucked into a garden near Geneva, was rebuilt, taller than any monument on the planet, a structure of shimmering crystal and Terran steel, entwined like 2 hands forever clasped. At its center stood no hero, just an empty circle where the Arvani would have danced. Their voices played softly, eternally, powered by the same solar grid that ran Earth's orbital defenses. It was not a monument to war. It was a promise. Because for all Earth's fury, for all the power it unleashed, one truth had emerged. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, and a galaxy that had forgotten what that meant. Now they remembered, even in the far reaches of the outer spiral, on worlds where news came light years late, rumors of what happened to Threx Prime spread like wildfire. Children whispered it in schoolyards. Generals studied it in war colleges. And pirates, those once bold raiders of Terran vessels, began to mutter under their breath, "You mess with Earth, you die," without a headline. But perhaps the most haunting change was this. Across hundreds of species, a new phrase began to enter their languages, spoken in different tongues, but all meaning the same. Don't break Earth's heart. Because it's not anger that terrifies. It's what a broken-hearted species with precision, patience, and power can do when pushed too far. It was never about war. It was about the silence that followed. And silence, in a galaxy full of teeth and engines and roaring banners, was the most terrifying thing Earth had left behind. Because when Earth struck back, it didn't plant flags. It didn't take prisoners. It didn't demand tribute. It simply erased the ones who thought mercy was weakness. And now, in the wake of the ash and the song and the vanishing of Threx Prime, the question echoed through every council chamber and palace and hidden war room in the galaxy. If Earth can do that to its enemies, what does it do to the ones it still forgives? Years passed. Not many. Just enough for the fear to sink in and the lesson to burn its way through history like a scar across time. New maps were drawn. Not borders. Not trade routes. But zones of respect, unspoken but known. Systems where humans had once befriended someone, where treaties had been signed, or aid had been offered, where Earth had laughed, had danced, had shared. Those were the places no one dared touch. Not for profit, not for power, not even by mistake. Because the Arvani hadn't just been a species. They had been Earth's friends, and that made them sacred. The remnants of Threx biology, what few isolated colonies hadn't been wiped from existence, tried to plead for mercy. They weren't soldiers, they said. They didn't raise weapons. They didn't know. They were just scientists, refugees, scattered survivors of a world they no longer recognized. But Earth didn't send assassins, didn't send more ships. Instead, it sent silence. And one message, sent only once, encoded into a beam of pure light. You watched. You knew. You celebrated. You were not innocent. You were not loud. You were quiet when quiet was complicity. And now we're the same. No further response was ever sent. And Earth never mentioned the Threx again. But this is not a story about death. This is a story about what comes after. On a quiet moon orbiting Ilara. 3. A small Arvani girl ran barefoot across a field of tall grass, her hands glowing faint blue as she laughed. Her laughter echoed between the trees and the clean, white stone buildings of the Terran Arvani Cultural Preserve. She wasn't alone. Children of all species played there now. Earth had built it, not to replace the Arvani, but to protect the memory of who they were, and to raise the kind of galaxy that would never let them be forgotten. Above that moon, a Terran ship sat in geosynchronous orbit. It carried no weapons. It bore no insignia. Its only purpose? To watch, to listen, to make sure no one ever came too close again. Elsewhere, in the vast shadowed halls of the Galactic Tribunal, a Terran representative now held a permanent seat. She was not a general, not a politician. She was a teacher. Her name was Juno Adebayo. And when she spoke, entire nations listened, not because of power, but because of principle. She taught the story of the Arvani, of how they had sung across the stars, even as they died, of how Earth did not forget, of how mercy ends when compassion is mocked by cruelty. One line from her speech was quoted across 1,000 planets. Mercy is a door we leave open, even for our enemies. But hurt the ones we love, and you'll find out we lock it from the inside. And so Earth became something new, not a superpower, not a terror, but a guardian. Its ships patrolled trade routes not for conquest, but for protection. Its drones rebuilt shattered outposts, no matter the species. Its scientists cured diseases no one else bothered to fix. Quietly, anonymously, humbly. And yet, everyone remembered. Because when Earth gave kindness, it wasn't from fear. It was from choice. And when Earth gave warnings, they weren't threats. They were promises. There were still whispers, rumors, stories of Black Fleet that roamed the outer voids, unmanned and eternal, ships that could fold gravity and silent stars, a remnant of Project Nemesis, kept alive in case someone else ever forgot the cost of cruelty. No proof, no sightings, but everyone believed it, because belief is what Earth had mastered, not through propaganda, but through precision, through restraint, through a single clear message. We love fiercely, and we remember. Touch those we cherish, and you will not celebrate. You will not even be remembered. In time, the galaxy changed, not because of laws, not because of politics, but because of fear laced with awe and awe born from grief. What Earth had done wasn't just retribution. It was art, painted in silence, sung in sorrow, and delivered with such devastating clarity that even warlords learned to whisper instead of roar. And the name Arvani, once almost erased, now appeared on flags, on murals, on children's lullabies across dozens of worlds. Not because humans demanded it, but because the galaxy had learned something eternal. Protecting the innocent isn't weakness. It's the one thing that makes us worth fearing, and worth following. So no, this is not a story about war. It's not a warning. It's a reminder that even in the coldest corners of space, mercy survives, but only because someone fierce enough stands guard behind it. And when the stars look down, they do not see Earth as a conqueror. They see the final promise of friend. Hurt them, and we'll become the silence between your screams.